Hello, children. This is Randy Ritchie bringing you Women Wrestlers You Should Know in commemoration of Women's History Month 2023, and it is sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. Please, at the very least, like and subscribe, and you can see where to support Premier Pro Wrestling on the links in the descriptions. So, man, I've got to talk about the ninth wonder of the world, Chyna, Joanie Lauer. And I'm probably going to do more than one episode on her just because you have to. There's just too much, so much there. So let me talk about how I knew Joanie. So the first thing is I wrestled in the Memphis territory as part of the last of the full-time talent roster. During that off and on period for 5 years, the second time I went in there, I was wrestling 15 times a week. The first time I was wrestling 8 times a week. What happened then is we would work every day, twice on Saturdays, because we'd start at the Memphis TV studio on Saturday mornings. And then we would get one Sunday off every 6 weeks, which was great for the business and great for the talent. You couldn't be hurt, and you just became an undeniable performer. So that being said, I was lucky enough to pair up with Robert Fuller, the Fuller Welches. Rob's grandfather, Roy Welch, is credited by a lot of people for bringing wrestling out of the carnivals and into the arenas. And there's the most successful promotions, the best televisions, the Fullers / Welches, the real last name was Welch. So they were Fuller Welches. They are just undeniably grandfathers of the industry, So like I said, I was lucky enough to have Robert take me under his wing and teach me how to work. But not just that, teach me how to work when we were running the roads together. I lived with Rob, I worked out with Rob, I ate with Rob, I traveled the roads with Rob. I was with Rob 24/7. He really taught me how to get along with people. But Robert Fuller, as a booker, is responsible for some of the most entertaining wrestling television in the history of the industry. Just nobody will deny his great mind. So that being said, once the Fuller Welches take you under their wing, you become almost like a relative, And that being said, the Fuller Welches had such an amazing relationship with the Armstrongs, the Armstrong family. So that being said, when you are a Fuller Welch affiliate, I feel like I'm talking about the mob kinda. If you're a Fuller Welch affiliate, what ends up happening there is the Armstrongs become your second cousins. Now, everybody knows the road dog B.G. James, and what a great individual. At the end of the day, what he lacked in the beginning of wrestling prowess, he made up for with life experience because he is a decorated and brave combat veteran. He is so charismatic and so likable outside the ring, inside the ring, especially when he got comfortable inside a wrestling ring. So there was a time when B.G. James, Brian, was the roadie for Jeff Jarrett. And when Jeff left the company, or probably before Jeff left the company, they wanted B.G. James to be a wrestler. They wanted to take advantage of the guy's natural charisma and put his happy ass on screen and make a shitload of money, and that's what ended up happening. So that being said, all the Armstrongs were good guys. It's the way they were raised, and they were born and bred into the wrestling industry. So it was so easy for Brian once he, started with World Wrestling Entertainment or World Wrestling Federation. I can't remember which one it was then. It was going to come natural and it was going to come quick. when he had his first get over match on TV. Gerald Briscoe was there, and he was the agent, and I was handpicked by somebody, probably because we were basically second cousins because of my affiliation with Robert Fuller. They picked me to help put him over. Now, he had done some wrestling before, don't get me wrong, but he didn't have the accolades that the brothers did because, he went to school and then he went into the military. So he had some catching up to do, Being a nice, humble guy, people started to try to put their 2 senses in, and he became stressful. And let's face it, that is a stressful position, especially then. It's a get-over match, and if you guys can just stop and think for a second how much 1 minute on any WWE television costs, that's already a huge, huge fucking thing. The next part of it is you have one chance. They're handing you the ball. If you fumble, you're probably fucked. And I'm sure for, just a normal person that sucks to fail. But for an Armstrong, you see what I'm saying? Who that family, it was just unbelievable performers in that ring. Undeniable performers in that ring. He was under a lot of stress in addition to the politics. Then there were some of the old agents were still around, so they wouldn't talk to you. They would bark at you, And Gerald was not one of those. But Brian's stress was getting to Gerald, so finally I just stepped up and said, we got this. Trust me, guys. Please trust me. And we ended up having a really good match that got Brian over. Now, I'm not taking responsibility for Brian's career. I'm just saying, for that situation, I was the right guy to put him with. So that being said, he is just a grateful, humble human. And he, from that point, knew that I was his second cousin because of the Fuller Welches. But also, he appreciated, and, he doesn't forget, So, fast forward, and at some point, and I'm not good at the years, I was in charge of bringing in extra or non-contract talent for the Midwest and beyond for World Wrestling Entertainment. And that being said, I guess it was just on the onset, or I guess the inception of, or right around the inception of, the Click, quote unquote. And the Click started behind the scenes. The Click, the term, quote unquote, the Click, was based on a shoot, and it was a shoot. During that, I don't pay much attention to that, but I did like to see Brian. And when I would go up and do things for World Wrestling Entertainment, I'd always check in with him, check in with me, watch matches together on the monitor, sit by each other, change by each other. And that being said, you couldn't help but do that around Brian. If you're around him, you were around Triple H, you were around Shawn, and you were around Chyna. And because of my being not really, but extended family of Brian, that's when Chyna, began to be kind to me. She didn't big time me or ignore me or anything like that. She included me in conversations because she just wasn't a rude girl. Now, Triple H and Chyna were both trained by Killer Kowalski, Waldorf, but we call him Walter, Killer Kowalski. Killer Kowalski was in charge of taking non-contract talent and extras and testing them in the ring, and they had to pass Kowalski's test before they could even put anybody over on any of the WWE programming. I would say the first or second time that I brought guys up, and there were some other guys that somebody else brought up, that was like quick. Walter just took people through stuff very efficiently. As he was a businessman, you had to be a businessman to have as long a career as he did and make as much money as Killer Kowalski did. Now, he was crusty, but I knew the old timers, and I loved that crusty. a lot of times the crustier and grumpier they are, the better the worker they were. And that guy was a legend, and I was just old enough to understand the legend that was Killer Kowalski and the international power he had to draw a crowd and the believability. I mean, go back and watch the black and white televisions from the 50s, and you tell me if that wasn't a menacing character, Killer Kowalski. So one day, I had brought up Adam Pierce as an 18 or 19-year-old, to do jobs up there, and he passed Walter's test. That stuff was over in like a half an hour. And I just said, the hell with it. We might not get the chance again. And I liked Adam. I had retrained Adam. I'd taken Adam under my wing. So I figured, the hell with it. Walter, why don't you show us some of those old sugar holds? Well, that old man lit up like a Roman candle. He must have been 80-something years old. And then for the next 90 minutes, he was showing us this really cool stuff. I mean, really cool takedowns, transitions, and holds. Nobody was paying attention to us out there. And we were so focused on Walter that next time I knew it, when I turned around, everybody in the company on the talent roster or the agents, and including Vince McMahon, was sitting in the bleachers watching us, having a blast, watching Walter not only tie us in knots, but also passing that stuff on. And some of the younger talent on Vince's roster then jumped in, and it was the coolest thing ever, because ever taping after that, all the young talent who didn't know who Killer Kowalski was, they heard the name but didn't know who he was, would hit him up, and Walter would hold court out there with a lot of the guys. So, that being said, Walter was old school, and I am sure he was not racist, sexist, or any of that stuff, because he was, in fact, himself an immigrant. So I could tell, and you have to think about it, and when I got to know Walter even more, for him to train a female wrestler to the extent that he did, one that had it, I'm sure there was more than just the business bond there. There had to be a whole hell of a lot of personal bond there, and you could tell by the way Triple H interacted with Killer, and also and especially Chyna. So before long, I became really comfortable around her. Shawn was there, but I always learned to avoid Shawn because he could either make you look good or make you look bad, depending on his mood back then. But I was really cool with Triple H. I was really cool with Bryan, so that made me really cool with Chyna. I can't tell you how cool and how nice and how soft-spoken and what a lady she was. I first started, I just the hell with it. I've always been a great worker, but I was always too small to be anything but mid-card or under. So I hit her up about training, and she would give me great advice freely about weights, about stretching, and about supplementation, and about nutrition. So then she became, I'm going to go ahead and say fuck it. I'm going to go ahead and say Chyna became a friend. I gave a shit about her. In turn, she gave a shit about me. Fast forward a few years, and shortly after she left World Wrestling Entertainment, somebody got in touch with me to help book a card down in Texas, Hidalgo, Texas, at the Mexico, close to the Mexican border. And this promoter, he had contacted me, and he had went through an agent and booked Chyna for the event. He was terrified to handle her, quote unquote, handle her. And I was like, it's been a few years, but that's a good person. I don't care what they're saying about her on the internet. And you assholes are still internet wrestling marks. Some of you assholes calling yourselves wrestlers now. But back then, when you were on One Wrestling and Woo Wrestling and all that shit, you said a lot of shitty things about her, And I never understood why. When they dubbed her the ninth wonder of the world, think about it. She really was. So what I'm going to do right now is read something that I stumbled upon because I'm trying to find out her real strength. One thing you have to know about Chyna, 5'10", 180 pounds, okay? She was not on steroids, and I take her word for it. And maybe we can disprove to some of these assholes, or some of you assholes that go, oh, poor Chyna now, that were burying her back then in regards to her training. This is something I came across from a blog called Chaos and Pain, and it's 1 year old. Before you start in with the whole tired, looks like a man bit, and bear with me, this is how this guy's writing. This isn't me if somebody wants to hit me up later with me toes or shit, but I like how this guy writes. Looks like a man bit that looks like a man bit that dudes with limp dicks and low T cannot help but drop into the comments about Chyna. Don't bother. She didn't bang dudes who were smaller and less awesome than she was. So you wouldn't have even been a blip on her radar. At the end of the day, however, whether you're sexually attracted to Chyna is completely immaterial to the matter at hand. She was the first chick wrestler to throw down with men and hold her own. The first female enforcer, only female intercontinental champion, first chick Royal Rumble entrant. Chyna was so jacked that she made her WWE debut as Triple H's enforcer, which makes sense when you discover that she outbenched that dickless slug, and I didn't call you that, Triple H, despite of the fact he outweighed her by 75 pounds. As her insanely inadequate posthumous WWE profile puts it, the ninth wonder of the world, as she was known, broke as many gender barriers as she did bodies, and that is the honest of God's truth. Now you'll see that the edit that we have, the picture that we have on this first episode commemorating Chyna, it's her versus Mark Henry, and I'd forgotten that this had happened, this angle, this match or series of matches, when I set out to talk about Chyna. For those of you who have never met the man, Mark Henry is not human-sized. His head was literally the size of my torso when I met him, weighing around 180 pounds. He's sawing the shit out of this, but to move the man at all, you must be insanely strong. It's like trying to move a stubborn buffalo. He's literally that big. And that is amazingly true. Everything on him is big. His digits, his head, his voice. Look at the chest and back on Mark Henry, and we don't have to talk about all his actual physical accolades. Here's what I'm getting to. Joanie, Chyna Lauer, vital statistics. She was 5'10", so with boots on, she's 6 foot, probably just over 6 foot. Her weight was 180 pounds. Her bench press, she could bench press 315 for sets of 5, and her max was 365. Her deadlift was 420 pounds, and her squat was 405. Her max was 465 for 5. Now, can you guys just stop and think for a minute? In the 90s, women were not pushing this kind of weight. To give you a bit of perspective, this is a woman who competed as a bodybuilder and didn't live for strength, but who would be firmly in the top 10 of all-time 181-pounders had she competed with an estimated 1,348-pound total. And in the conversation for 5th all-time, and I'm aware the gym lifts don't count, bullshit everyone loves bandying about, I don't understand this part. But the fun thing about bodybuilder maxes is that they're extremely repeatable, as in they do most maxes on a regular basis. Hell, in her first workout with Triple H, she outbenched that empty nutsack in an interview Triple H said. Now, just think about that for a second. Imagine if she was a power lifter, what she would have been capable of, because I know a ton of power lifters, males, that cannot touch this kind of weight even today. Now, here's Mark Henry, and this is what I want you to hear. This is the high spot for tonight in this first episode about Chyna, Joanie Lauer. This is per Mark Henry. We're in the gym, and Joanie and I are ready to start. I begin by putting 135 pounds on the bar. Do a few reps to warm up. Joanie puts 135 pounds up and does the same thing. And right off, I'm thinking, wow, most women top off at 135 pounds. That's true. I've seen it in the serious gyms that I've lifted in over time. When she's done with her set of 135, Joanie grabs another 90, throws it on. She's 225 now. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, she's going to do that? Uh-huh. Sure, she's trying to get a job, trying to impress me. She'll do a few reps and peter out. We both do the 225, and she just smacks it out. 10 reps, just like that. No strain. Before I can catch my breath, she cranks it up to 315. Now I'm thinking, no fucking way. This is going to cut her in half. But she grabs it. Boom, boom. 2 reps, no sweat, like she's pumping sponge cake here. In my head, I'm thinking, God, I haven't even hit that. Now, this is a man who was considered at one point one of the strongest men in the world. No, I didn't see any selling in there because he's factually telling you about the weights and working out with her, you know? Now, here we go. I'm going to get into this a little bit. You know what? I'm going to say this because I'm going to talk about the facts that are listed here and some things that people might not think about, and the things that really pissed me off back in the day when the internet wrestling community, the internet wrestling fan, who was probably mostly today's idiot, was bashing this girl. You know, nothing makes me sicker. You know, when this stuff started happening as a society with the bullying of people, especially women, you know, you started to see suicides and things like that from all the bullying. And I don't understand this fucking pack mentality, you know. And the only thing I could think of with her is the amazing jealousy that people had, especially idiots and indie wrestlers, because she was a female. You guys have no idea how hard she worked, and I'll get into some of that later, how hard she would work out, the sacrifices that she made, and how focused she was. The bottom line is anybody with even an inkling of the heart that she had, or inkling or any kind of attribute that could make them a wrestler, if they worked as hard as Joanie did, and they trained as hard as Joanie did, and they focused as hard as Joanie did, and they sacrificed as hard as Joanie did, they could achieve. But you guys don't. You're too busy hating and worrying about what everybody else is getting and you're not, you know? Imagine how hard it was for her, the odds for her. At the time, women's wrestling was only tits, ass, negligee matches, puppies, thongs, bathing suits, you know what I'm saying? So back to this, what happened, and I'll end this episode with this last part, and then tomorrow I'll go on more about her when, you know, the way she was raised and the rough upbringing that she had. So at that spot in Hidalgo, you know, the internet had blown up, and it had to be One Wrestling that was basically covering this shit or trying to make her look bad. The promoter was all worried and afraid of how we were going to control the ninth wonder of the world, and you're booking this for me, so you're the booker, you deal with her. I'm like, man, motherfucker, let's not let's not false start here, you know? Well, I'll be damned, man. She was the same girl. And the thing about her then was she was still working out. She was very firm and lean, but she wasn't, her muscles weren't jacked. She was a little softer, but incredible shape. She looked fucking great. She had lightened her hair, and it really became her. And the thing that I always remember about Joanie, and I don't know what perfume she wore because I never asked. No, I think I did ask, but I didn't remember. She always smelled wonderful. You know, some people wear cologne or perfume and you can smell it covering up their stink or covering up their hairspray, or, they don't really balance it out with the type of deodorant that they wore. I mean, I got a sensitive nose, and some people call me smell phobic, but she just always smelled wonderful, It was such an attraction, you know what I mean? And everybody in Hidalgo, Texas, and McAllen down there had to come and get their stuff signed by Chyna. Just amazing. And then he's like, well, I wanted to do something in the ring tonight. Oh, we're not going to get her able to do it. And I came up with a little storyline angle for her to cut a promo and thank everybody after she'd sign autographs. I came in as the heel to poo-poo her, and she threw a beating on me, bumped me a couple, 2-3 times, and everybody popped and left, and then she left, and she, even though at that point she could have been, it wasn't that long after the big run, she meant so much in that area that she actually drew unbelievably just to get a picture and shake a hand or talk to her. It was amazing. But she never got big time, Tomorrow we'll talk more about the things that mean a shitload to me and some things that you probably haven't thought of, because I think of these things because I've been in recovery for 41 years and I had the affliction, and I know as one, I have a lot of parameters that I want people to think about, and especially in her memory. Of course, you see all this stuff. They did the A&E biography on her and all that, and, everybody buries Vince McMahon and all that stuff. And I'm going to give you some food for thought is all I'm going to say. All right, again, women wrestlers, you should know this is being brought to you commercial-free by Premier Pro Wrestling, by PPW. At the very least, like and subscribe, and please support us at the links below. Especially check out our Patreon. Premier Pro Wrestling on Patreon. We've got the most match content out there on Patreon. And every other industry, especially comedy, true crime, and music, is, being very comfortable. The growth of Patreon has been unbelievably consistent. It's only a matter of time before you wrestling fans or, people that love wrestling content are also comfortable with it. Thanks again.